Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. And today I am joined with Linda L. Miller, who is the author of An In-Depth Experience with a Child Who Has a Disability, serving the role as an autism parent, school years made simpler. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Dr. Campbell, for inviting me to your show today.
Well, I don't know if we actually talked about this when we initially met. We met face to face, but I too have a special needs daughter. She's actually 32. And so I really was excited about having you on the show because I know that there are others out there that haven't read a book, that are struggling, and that our conversation is going to be very helpful. So before we get into the book, we're not going to tell them everything that's in the book because they need to read the book. We're just two women having a conversation, right? We'll use the book kind of as a foundation, but we want them to get their own copy of the book. But before we get into the book, tell our listening, viewing audience about your background.
Okay. Hi, my name is Linda Miller, and actually I'm of course, a parent. I have two children. I'm married, and I actually am still working. So I have a background in working and trying to shuffle family life, multiple things sometimes. So I am currently in the public service work line, and I really enjoy it. So um, that's pretty much what I'm doing right now with my family and as well as my personal career. Yeah.
All right. So you have a child that is autistic. So before we get into the book, tell us a little bit about your journey as a parent of a child who has autism.
Okay. So I have it's my son. So what happened is of course having a kid that has autism, some of the signs will not was not going to be seen until they get a little, a little older. So I think around the age of somewhere around those 18 months, my son started to change a little bit. But it was some positivity with that change. So what he was doing was actually stuff that would have thought that your child was headed toward being like this little genius kid. He actually was reading, doing a little bit of reading there. At 2, he was doing his numbers all the way up to 100, and he can actually go do his alphabets backwards as well as forward. So it was like amazing to us. But what was noticed is that my mom, she noticed that we had some more nephews and nieces. They were kind of in the same age range, and they would actually have more verbal usage of their words, where my son was more of a one word, really minimum, not really talking in, like sentences and things like that. So she was a little concerned, and then it kind of brought to my attention because otherwise I wouldn't have never recognized at that particular age because I just thought that was something, that was pretty common, even though I had a kid before, and I thought that two children can grow up differently as far as, language or whatever their characteristics. So then as we got kind of observing that, we went ahead and started to address that with our physician, a pediatrician, and she recommended some places that we can go and get some testing done. So we, took some of those testings, those different types of testings you take chromosome tests, you take some psychological tests, you take some little activity testing, and he was doing pretty, he did pretty well on all those tests, pretty much passed everything there. So, right at that particular age, they really don't want to diagnose your child with anything. So, as the years went on, he got into preschool, and then a preschool teacher started noticing some stuff with him. And then that was when he was kind of probably about 4 years old. So, at that time, you can get, go back to the physician, find out some more information, and then he was done some more testing, and then that's when the diagnosis was given. And so it's a really devastating thing for a parent, especially if you're a parent that has never been exposed to anything like that in your life. And so, of course, just like Dr. Campbell was saying, there was limited resources. And then, of course, we knew of no one else with this particular situation. So we pretty much took it from there and started the process. And so that's where I'm going to stop right now. If there's anything else I can begin to talk about.
Well, first of all, listening to your journey, I had to hold back my tears because there were some similarities in your story, but also your journey, but also some differences with my daughter Jasmine and I, because number one, I had not had any children prior to her. She was my first child. And when she was born, there was evidence of intracranial bleeding in the brain. And we were in the hospital for like 7 days and it cleared up, right? So I went home thinking all was well. But I will add that she was born at 34 weeks gestation because I was losing fluid from around the placenta. I had a C-section, right? But I was thinking I had prenatal care from day one, right? So clearly all would be well, right? But so like you, my mother said, something's wrong with Jasmine. She's not developing like a baby should be. And then I went to the neighborhood doctor who said, well, not all children progress at the same state, right? But I'm like, all the literature says that when they're this age, they do this. And yes, some kids do it earlier, but I just accepted that that was the answer. And then I kind of went about life, but then it was like she was past two. She wasn't walking. She wasn't talking. We realized something was wrong with her hearing, and it wasn't autism at that point, right? It was just like, okay, we need to do something different. And so we took her to a developmental pediatrician at Laura Beta's Children's Hospital here in Chicago. And this developmental pediatrician just started like doing all these different tests. So she had hearing, she had the chromosomal test. And that's when one after the other, the diagnoses started to unfold. And I have to be honest, as a single parent, and I gave birth to her 30 days before my 19th birthday. So as a single parent, a young mother, I was just torn apart internally, like, right? Externally, you couldn't tell that I was struggling, but internally, I was ripped apart because I'm like, if I could be honest, I never wanted kids, right? And so when I got pregnant with her, obviously I had sex. It was the first time I had sex. And while some had encouraged me to terminate the pregnancy, I was just like, well, I did what I did. And so now I need to just accept my responsibility, right? But little did I know about the journey that I was about to embark on. And so I'm glad to hear your story because yours was similar but different than ours. My daughter Jasmine is 32 today, but she still does not talk. Um, she has profound sensory neural hearing loss. So you could call her name and she's not going to necessarily turn around. But if I make eye contact with her and I say, come here, she knows that I'm signaling for her to come here. But also, she does require 24-hour care. So she doesn't live at home with us. She lives in a 4-bedroom home with other women. And over the years, I realized that I was able to find my voice because I spent all that time advocating for her and just trying to navigate it. But I didn't have a resource. I read What to Expect When You're Expecting, right?
Mhm.
But as you know, children do not come. It's not like buying a car where you get a user's manual, right? They're born and you deal with whatever your child presents with. Most times normal, but other times maybe not. But having just a guide to help understand parts of the journey, navigate parts of the journey. I just recently read another book. I'm reading books nonstop. Books are arriving on my doorstep daily because I find another one. I find another one. And I recently read a book by a physician who talks about how we need to be more actively engaged in our care when we go to the healthcare services, right? Like, I think the old mindset was whatever the doctor said, that stands. And we didn't really come into the office with like our list and thoughts and all of that. So I'm actually going to be interviewing her this year as well because her book is another book, which I think with this one is a great resource for parents to have. So, what made you put your experience on paper?
Wow, what a question. I get very emotional with that one too, because what happened is by me having a child and I'm living in a certain community, a lot of people approach me. They either come to me to this day, they come to me and they call or they'll call me and they'll ask me that can I speak to someone that they have either in their family, first timers, or they know of someone else's family that needs someone to talk to, or either their doctor has just given them a diagnosis. Oh, and I know exactly how they feel. So what had happened is that I was actually talking to individuals and I would actually start, I'm a person that's, like to put information down. So I would start taking these notes and then I say, and I would tell them, I say, you know what, I'm going to give you this information. I'm going to send you this information. But then in the back of my head, I used to always say, wow, I wished I had a book. Oh, that's a tremendous blessing to have something that visually you can see. Because I bought books, just like you have all these books. I bought these books. And when I was buying books on this subject, I never saw a book that actually talked about a family's experience, like the actual, what do you do? What did they do? The walk they went through. What I did see is statistical numbers, really broad, vague information that didn't bring you into the household or did not show you a journey. And that's why I could not find anything. And to this day, there is still limited personal experiences because sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of families are in denial. And denial is such a very intricate part of this because the longer you wait to start to move, the less you can get those earlier years and you can draw some type of better foundation for your child and your family. And so we had nothing out there that showed us things that could possibly happen in the future. We all walk in a different journey, but we all may have some similarities in this. And so a lot of the similarities actually come on the back end. And things that you would have needed to know in an early part of this stage, it wasn't there. You did not learn it until maybe the same year you needed the information. But to get this information 10, 20 years ahead of time is just a phenomenal thing. And you will, if you really do the research and read and find out, this information I tried to package in a small little guide. It's very easy reading, where you can have this for the rest of your life to refer back to. And you need to kind of get your other support village, family members, community around anybody that's going to be exposed to your individual, and they can learn a little bit about maybe what you are going through, what you went through, the things you may still have to go through. And that makes them to understand much better. And then it also gives a better way of communicating with individuals in this situation, and to learn how to have more compassionate in this area for individuals, and to have more compassionate for the parents or the guardians or any of the people that have been legally assigned to individuals in this situation. So I know a lot of people nowadays, they're not as open still, but it helps to build. And that's the most important thing, the build for caring.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's so expensive, those conferences and things like that. It's so expensive. I went to a lot of those back earlier on just to get more information. And still, still not, it doesn't sometimes hit exactly what you need inside your house. So that's part of where this particular book has come from.
I love it. I love it. And I think you were spot on when you said that you have these conferences, but they don't really appeal to your own individual journey. And you need something that gives you the foundation and you can build from there, as opposed to, and I, you know what? I go to a lot of conferences. I believe you and I met at a conference. um, and so you go to these conferences, and for me, this is where I'm at in 2024. When I go to the conference, I go with an expectancy spirit that I'm going to walk away with something, whether it's somebody I meet. I met you. I'm tapped in all the way. And sometimes I walk away having spent more money, but didn't get what I need. And when I think about what I need, even still today, 32 years later, what I needed 30 years later was, number one, to realize I wasn't alone, but also understand what potentially was going to happen next, right? You talk about the different years, right? And what happens. And what happened to your baby may not be what happened to my baby, but at least you can expect some things, right? Like you can expect that there's going to be an individualized education program, IEP, right? You can expect that. And if you don't have it, that's a problem. You need to then advocate for that. But there were so many, and I you're making me think I need to write a book about my Jasmine journey, just Jasmine, right? In my book, Grow With Me, I have a chapter dedicated to her. But if I can be honest, if I go upstairs and pull out my Jasmine file cabinet, which begins with her birth records all the way through present day, I probably got 12 chapters of content that I could share that I think people need to hear and see, and not pay $1 million for it. Because I remember when she was 3 and we went to the early intervention program for 3 to 5, right? There was a social worker who I was working with. And one day she came to me and said, I think Jasmine would benefit from a residential facility. And I looked at this woman. She had been very helpful, but there was one little small problem. And I know some people may say, oh, it's not a problem. She didn't look like me.
Mhm.
And I went home and talked to friends, And they were like, "Are you crazy? Black people do not put their kids in a residential facility. You need to keep her at home with you." But I realized I wasn't a speech therapist. I wasn't an occupational therapist. I wasn't any of those therapists, but I was in healthcare and I needed to work so that I could give her what she needed. And so I think one of the biggest decisions of my life was the day that I dropped her off at the residential facility. And when she went from one residential facility to another, the angst that I felt didn't end from the first one. The first one, I was crying and had to be pulled out of the building, right? But every time she transitioned from one to the next, and she was at 3 facilities as, let's just say, um, as a young person, right? And then she went to, she aged out, right? And I didn't know about an age out thing. I'm thinking, oh, she's here. This is my baby. She can stay here forever. But she aged out and had to go to, adult placement where she's been for the last 10 years. But as you navigate those twists and turns, for me, it would have been nice to know what potentially could happen next. About the fact that I had to apply for guardianship for her once she turned 18, right? In the book, you talk about dads and father figures. And one of the things I'm so grateful for today is that I did eventually get married, and my husband is truly her father, right? She's, other than my grandfather, who's 103 and still alive, and my uncles and my father, she knows him as the, like, I'm the mom, and she knows him as the dad, right? He's the one that cuts her hair, and he's the one that does all the things. And so having this community from all aspects is so important. So what would you say? And I told you, we're not going to tell them about the book. They got to get their own copy of the book because they need to have a copy for them to read. And on page 25, you talk about crying, and crying may be the answer. Crying may be the solution. And I tell people all the time, my motto is that you have to shed the weight that is holding you hostage. And for me, crying is one of the ways that I shed things that are holding me back. And I realized a long time ago, it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually what I'm supposed to be doing. It's what my body is designed to do because I'm showing those emotions. And once I get a good cry in the car or in the tub, I feel so much better, like I could tackle the world. But what would you say to that mom or that dad, that mom and that dad, or that grandma that says, I don't think I can handle this journey?
Hmm. I would have to I have not been exposed to that type of scenario because my mom was such a great help. My husband he's wonderful. So I haven't been exposed to that scenario. But what I would probably, if I did encounter it, I would have to say, let's just take this journey one step at a time and let's see where it leads us. And then there may be sometimes you may have to not be, unfortunately, all the way in the other person, because that stops the progress. And the thing about it is time for a parents like us is an essence. Time is so valuable. So you don't want to have the roadblocks that could come as far as stopping the project. So either you got to make sure you get that team that's on that side to keep going, but the other ones can still be there. And they have to contribute, just what you can contribute. So we can't focus in on who said they can't do it or whatever. Because if it's in you to do it, you got to do what you got to do. Because they're here, they're alive, they're breathing, they need help. And if you have that in you, you are the person that needs to do that. Because otherwise, you're going to have somebody that's just going to slow you down, slow them down, and it's going to be stopping the progress. So it's all about keeping going, but not really burning yourself out, but try to keep things moving. Keep the wheels oiled, keep the gears going. And that's the best way I can explain it.
I love it. I told someone recently that I had to realize, as a woman of faith, I had to realize that God gave her to me for a reason. He knew that I would figure out what to do with her, but He is with me on every step of the journey. Even when I couldn't trace Him, even when I couldn't feel Him, He was there. And I know it to be true because when I bring my daughter home, oftentimes she's sitting over there by the TV, and she's just looking up in the air, and she just laughing and smiling. And so I know God has had His hand of protection around her from the start, even when I didn't know what was going to happen next. So I firmly believe that it's by no mistake that we've been blessed with these babies. It's by no mistake.
Right. Yeah.
So you talk about this being an easy resource, and I will agree because I read a lot of books, and it is a very easy read. For those of you who are wondering, like, what's some key features of the book? So I'll tell you, there are places for you to write a list of your resources. And I think oftentimes we don't know we need all these folks, right? So speech pathologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, medical doctors, psychological, dentists. Dentist is a whole situation when it comes to special needs children. Sometimes my daughter, every time she goes to the dentist, she has to have some mild sedation.
Yes.
Yeah, because if not, because it's the other thing. These babies are strong. My daughter is so physically strong, but she's so little, but she's strong. So a respite worker. Oh my gosh. All of these resources that we don't even know are available lets us know that we're not alone. You're not alone in this journey. So, what final parting words do you have for our listening, viewing audience? And while you're thinking about that, I'm just going to remind everybody what we're talking about. So, this is an in-depth experience with a child who has a disability. And this book really highlights autism. I was so happy to see The Good Doctor, where we saw this high functioning autistic individual. But there are some people who are listening to this. You know, someone who's in denial about your child's diagnoses. And I'm going to tell you, you got to get the help. You cannot ignore it because it is not going to go away. So what are some final parting words of wisdom, encouragement that you want to leave with our listening, viewing audience?
What I would like to leave is that just get a foundation that you can build up on. If you come across any resources that you're interested in, please take time to read information, or if you know of anybody that's similar, going through similar situations, try to connect with them, build bonds with individuals. New information is coming out daily. Keep a track of what that new information is. Don't stop. Keep going. There's things that you as a parent or a person that's an overseer, you have to go out there. You have to go online. You have to research. So you need to see what type of individual you're working with. And you need to look at their talents, their skills, their characteristics. You need to see the things that areas that they need to be improved on. Sometimes you can get with groups of individuals and your child is in that group, but not necessarily everything that that group has is for your child. So it's good to have the social part of it, to learn and to grow. You get the connections from being in groups. You get the parenting groups together that can talk and that can kind of give each other comfort. You get that. But there's also individual part of it, and that is where you need to see what directions, what type of uh, therapies or things that will help your child improve. And then you can actually pull out the things that they are interested in and just make that broader, a broader focus for them, because you never know where that can lead them in the future. Because, of course, we all know that we may not all be there at the end together. So that's going to be so important to try to give them some soothing things that they really enjoy doing while you're here.
I love it. And one of my books that I've started reading, but kind of got distracted, which tells me I really need to get back on track. But it's about who will take care of my special needs child when I'm gone. And so there are resources out there for that as well. And I think part of it's because I'm trying to navigate my own end of life paperwork. I'm working on helping my father with his end of life paperwork. But it's one of those things that we really can't put off until tomorrow, because tomorrow's not promised. And while you have breath in your lungs, you need to, make the decisions.
So true.
Yes. Well, listen, everyone, I've been chatting with Linda L. Miller, author of An In-Depth Experience with a Child Who Has a Disability. Thank you so much for being willing to come on to the show to share your journey. We want others to buy the book. Where can they buy the book?
Okay. There are several places. One is the publisher website, which is ICCOLORS, the number 2, publish.com. So that's ICcolors2publish.com. And then there is also Amazon.com, as well as you can actually go onto ICcolors to publish LLC on Facebook, or you can just Google the book title, or you can you'll pull up the book there online on Google as well.
All right. Well, everyone, this has been another episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. I'll see you next time.